We're good.
You know what it was? I was I was what's it called? I was doing the sharing settings, not the recording settings. My fault.
Oh, you're good. Technical difficulties. It's all included. We're doing it
Every
live.
episode is important. We include one. Show our
Like, yeah, so I was kind of running through it, kind of how I gave the presentation, and feel free to go ahead and ask any questions as we go. Yeah. All right, so hi all, my name is Nate Loh. I conducted a consulting project with Freelance Corporal, and the project is titled A Mindful Approach to Behavioral Finance. A couple contents we're going to go over today. Why this is important, Freelance Corporal as a company, a potential opportunity for Freelance Corporal, our objectives, participants, methods, discussion, and where we see ourselves going in the near future. So this research is kind of important because we see that 65% of Americans don't know how much they spent last month. We do see this positive correlation between being able to account spending and age. And so what this essentially means is that the younger you are, the less likely you are to be able to recount how much you spent in the last month. And this actually increases with age. So the older you are, the more knowledgeable you should be about your spending habits. And we see that only 23% of Gen Zers and 27% of millennials can actually recount their spending from just the previous month. We see only 45% of Americans actively use a budget, and we see 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And although this is a 2022 study, we have seen huge amounts of increase in cost of living and inflation, especially in the past 3 months or so. So this figure is likely to increase, in the next few months / year or so. We see that 1.4 million veterans are considered at risk of becoming homeless, and that's a huge issue. And so this kind of is something that Freelance Corporal targets. It's a financial technology startup. They use nudges via mindfulness and feedback to improve users' spending and budgeting habits and financial literacy. And this isn't necessarily like a novel concept. We do see proven success of these upstream nudges in the past. A 2021 study saw that an increase in military personnel saving by $1,600 for every $1 spent. And I was just using something as simple as sending out email nudges to kind of nudge individuals to contribute to their retirement. And this, kind of just targets this whole idea of upstream interventions. However, the problem that Freelance Corporal has is that, just because it's a new financial technology startup, they lack data on the product's effectiveness on users. And, there are obviously opportunities for funding out there, but we need some kind of hardcore data to kind of get at, what is the effects that Freelance Corporal has. And, the fact is that there's an opportunity for Freelance Corporal. We see that the largest, cohort of individuals that, adopt financial technology are individuals. Oh, kind of going back, my apologies. We see that fintech adoption amongst US consumers at 88% actually trumps adoption of video streaming at 78% and social media by 72%. And so what this means is that we're actually seeing more individuals use financial technology than they are, streaming videos, or they're, using Instagram, TikTok, etc. And, kind of diving even further into this, we see that, 18 to 24-year-olds are the biggest adopters of financial technology. And here is where this, kind of plays into Freelance Corporal's favor, because we see that this, this 18, 24-year-old cohort, who are the biggest adopters of financial technology, are also, they make up the largest group of individuals in the armed forces. We see individuals 18, 25, counting up to about over 600,000, making up over 600,000 of actively enlisted armed force individuals, and half that going to the next largest category at 26 to 30. So obviously huge opportunity here for Freelance Corporal. And so this kind of drove our research question. What are the effects of Freelance Corporal's usage on financial risk-taking and spending behavior? So we studied participants. The inclusion criteria was they had to be currently enlisted at Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, California. And they had to have a smartphone. Data analysis inclusion criteria as determined by Freelance Corporal, the research team. They had to have a participation rate of over 33%. And so this was determined by a daily spending log that they had to fill out. Our sampling method, we used convenience and Snowball sampling, and data was collected by the Freelance Corporal team and then forwarded over to the primary researcher to maintain participant anonymity. We had 675 individuals sign up. We had 535 complete the pretest. And we had a grand total of 26 that qualified for final data set inclusion. And that's, obviously talking about before, the aforementioned figure of a daily participation rate of 33%. And so here's just a quick design of the study. We had a quick, recruitment by clients. We collected our pretest data, and we had our first of 2 risk-taking assessments administered before it started. We randomly assigned the individuals to a treatment and control group. The treatment group was sent feedback from a financial tool, and that was sent by the client, before week 1, and then after each subsequent week. And at the end, we had collected the post-test data, which was just a quick participant debrief, as well as a risk-taking assessment that was administered, and that's 2 of 2. For our methods, we want to look at, what are the effects of Freelance Corporal's usage on financial risk-taking? And so we gave them the scenario. The scenario was you're rolling a 10-sided die in which you win a large amount of money if your number is rolled, but a small amount of money if your number isn't rolled. You may choose to not roll at all and collect an amount of money described in each of the following scenarios. And so, here's kind of what the scenarios look like. You would win $100 if the die lands on a certain number, but $10 if the die lands on the numbers that weren't in your data set. And so, the first one that they were given was, hey, you get $100 if the die lands on 1, but only $10 if the die lands on 2 through 10. So that's a 10% potential for success. And so they were given the choice, hey, do you want to roll the die, or do you want to not roll the die and collect $30? So that $30 figure is obviously bigger than what you would get if you failed. So as if you died, it didn't land on one of your numbers, but obviously much smaller than if you wanted, and it did land on your number. And so if individuals chose the guaranteed figure, so that's, don't roll and collect the $30, they are then prompted to the next round, which is, hey, we're going to increase your odds by 10%. Do you want to roll the die and take that chance for a non-guaranteed payout? Or do you want to take the larger, the medium, figure at $30? And so for each time that they chose the guaranteed figure, their odds would increase by 10%. And so we wanted to look at when was the tipping point? When do we want to see these individuals take the non-guaranteed payout, the much larger one potentially, over the guaranteed payout? This was adopted from a 2008 study. Oh, I don't know what that's coming from. So our results here, we saw actually an increase across both the treatment and control groups. However, the control group saw an increase in financial risk-taking of 200% larger than that of the treatment group. And so we'll kind of go into this later on. And this is obviously off of a 10-point scale. When looking at participants' spending behavior, they were prompted, it was a 5-point Likert scale. From one end, it's like, hey, I spent a lot less than my budget goal. And this is defined as being, at least $20 under the budget for the day. The middle, so that's the third option is I met my budget goals. So it's within $5 of their goal. And the end of the other end of the Likert scale was, I spent a lot more than my budget goals. So that's at least $20 over budget. And again, individuals were prompted to take this assessment every day, usually in the evening, to measure their spending behavior for that day. And so what we saw here is that, at first, the treatment group very much underspent their control group peers. However, after the third week, we do see this inversion in this trend, and that the treatment group actually ended up spending a little bit more than their control group peers. However, it's important to note that, throughout this throughout the entire time of this study, the highest figure we got, which was the treatment group's week 4 average data, was the average of 3. And so looking at our chart down here, 3 means that they met the budget goal, and that's within plus minus $5. And so even though we do see this increase in spending by the treatment group, they're not overspending their goal, they're actually meeting their goal. So still a good thing. And obviously this kind of trends, is shown here, where we see that they underspend it during week 1, 2, and 3, and then the trend inverts in week 4 and 5. So, we do have some potential confounding variables here. First off, by simply tracking or by simply logging your data, that kind of adds mindfulness and awareness to one's spending. Simply having to keep track of how much you're spending makes one potentially more accountable for one's spending activity, and so the data may have been impacted there. We do see potential treatment acclimation in that the treatments may have been less impactful later on in the study due to the lack of variation. For the most part, they kind of took a similar form, like, hey, you met your spending goal, or you spent less than your spending goal for this many days out of the week. And it would also kind of give them some kind of form of financial advice, depending on some of the data they had kind of given us during the pretest. Saying like, hey, if you are to exit your enlistment in 2 years based off of like your spending for this past week, here's how much X amount of money that you're going to end up with after your tour is done. And lastly, here's the big one. We see that Ukraine, the conflict in Ukraine, is a potential mediating factor for not only the spending behavior, but also financial risk taking. At least on the app, there was a social component of it, and we did see increased chatter about deployment on the application after Russia invaded Ukraine. So obviously, that kind of suggests that it was top of mind to our participants. And this potentially increases spending behavior. A 2015 study suggests that when individuals are, a little bit more aware or mindful of their own mortality, like, hey, I'm only on this earth for X amount of time, and depending on what happens, if I'm shipped over to, defend Ukraine, that time might be even less so. And so this idea of like, hey, I can't take it with me, I'm going to spend and spend now. And so this whole idea of increased awareness of one's mortality potentially confounds the financial risk-taking and spending variables. Our pretest collection period was from February 15th to February 19th of February. And so that was obviously before Russia invaded Ukraine, and Russia invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February, with the second part of the financial risk-taking assessment taken during, during the Ukraine conflict. And, this kind of suggests that the treatment could potentially serve as a mediating factor. When we want to go back to this chart right here, we see that an increase, across both groups, which is, per the 2015 study, to be expected, because we do expect to see increase in financial risk taking. We do expect to see an increase in participant spending behavior, but we see a lot less increase in financial risk taking in the treatment group when compared to the control group. So it kind of underscores this idea that the treatment may actually serve as a mediating factor against this mortality angst or awareness of one's own mortality, that potentially increases spending. And yeah, as far as what's next, more research is needed to measure the app's effectiveness. So this obviously was kind of served as more of like a pilot due to the smaller sample size, and it's just crazy what we could potentially do with more funding. We operated the study off of a very, very limited budget, and we had relative amounts of success. Additionally, we'd like to see what does usage of the app, what does it mean for downstream individuals. And so what this means is like, hey, 5 years from now, individuals who use this app and use this treatment, what does their finances look like? And so only time will tell with that. And with the data here, with the pilot study data, we hope to potentially petition for more funding and grow Freelance Corporal and see what comes next. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Nate. Dude, there's this concept of thinking of working on the problem, not in the problem. And I know Dawson and you're familiar with super passionate about this. It's very easy to get sucked in and kind of forget the scientific methodology and the making it clean and ensuring that it works the way that it's intended, rather than we start off with good intents, but how do we make sure that we stick to that? And it's this thoughtful approach to the data collection that you really helped us put together. And I'm so very excited for the findings. A couple of things I wanted to mention. Excellent presentation. You hit on the upstream aspect in Bernardzi's data from 2021. Just the upstream intervention. It's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
It's insane, right? Because it's like these individuals spend, the DoD spends so much money to increase financial well-being, and you see this data here that suggests hey, for every $1 we can spend, we're actually increasing saving by $1,600. That's insane, right?
The amount of spending on the back end, the VA, the mental health care, problems that revolve around depression, anxiety, homelessness, joblessness, suicide, they all share a denominator with this financial literacy piece. So if you could spend, a dime on the dollar 5 years earlier when you're already teaching folks how to brush their teeth and tie their shoes, maybe we can instill some of those good habits, like the boot camp is already reputable for. So additionally, with the military population, there's been research on prize-linked savings. The non-veteran population, largely people who play the lottery, and they tried to kind of re-incentivize saving instead of buying a lottery ticket. This didn't experience a lot of success in the long term. There's so many factors to it. One of which being, the lack of income consistency. We don't have that in the military. In the military, everybody gets a paycheck on the 1st and the 15th, and we know how much it is. So we have all the tools necessary to nudge the behavior in a more positive direction, as long as approached mindfully. Now, the last thing I just wanted to touch on was the care and the thought that we put into the benevolence of a treatment versus a control group. It was important. If we're trying to improve risk-taking and spending behavior, I don't want to spend 5 weeks hooking one group up and just kind of ignoring the other. We wanted to make a positive impact on all players, but also isolate a variable to say, hey, if we do this, it works even better. So this is, for the Marine listeners, I grew up watching Mythbusters, and that was kind of the extent of my scientific testing understanding. I get the basics of it, but the further you dive into how to do that correctly and the considerations for how to conduct good positive research, it's there's a lot of misconception, and it's important to bring everybody to the table and really bash the methods to make sure that it's measuring what we want it to be. And this is something I was honored to be brought to the table at USC as the first veteran in this program to say, hey, nobody's asked this before. And I just didn't have my mind put together enough to ask it this way. And I'm so fortunate to have crossed paths with Nate, who's just so sharp and so scientific. And then Dawson, who's been so passionate about understanding what this could do for the Lance Corporal.
Not to interrupt anyone, but the ideas that were gone over here, I I think it's really interesting to look at how certain events or certain variations in the influence that you're receiving can impact your financial decision making. So things that we talked about, like mental health, Russia's war in Ukraine, and incentive versus punishment architecture based on financial decision making. When you add all of those things in, you start to see these patterns, and it doesn't even have to be like a control group versus non-control. Everyone in the group has that shared background, that shared point of commonality where you're all on Camp Pendleton together, or you're all in the Marine Corps, or you're all within the age group of 18 to 25, and your spending habits often mirror each other. But also there's the idea of, hey, well, I'm in XYZ unit, or I'm in XYZ group of folks, and we're more often than not the first choice to go get sent somewhere where my life expectancy might not be the same anymore. Or and those are really concerning questions when it comes down to throwing that 18 to 25-year-old. Who do you want your beneficiaries to be?
Yeah.
Where do you want the death money to end up? Like, what other insurances and protections do you have for your family set in place? And those decisions have to be made on a very quick timeline. And that's extremely concerning to someone who is constantly being rained on while they're already drowning, and the guy's like determining whether or not he should go blow the rest of his money now, since he's not going to have it to touch potentially in the next couple months. Or maybe they weren't in the mental headspace to go and set up all of their like estate planning and death tax and all of the things that I've talked about in my own podcast, separate from the ideas of Freelance Corporal, I think are being integrated in the app. And I think that's a beautiful thing, as long as we maintain the idea that whatever decision points that you start from, there's always a group that you're going to fit into. And if you're not alone, and that social aspect of the app really does improve the idea that, hey, maybe I'm not in the same position exactly as someone else, but if we're in a group together, we can positively motivate each other towards a common goal. And I think that's really interesting about the app.
Yeah. Yeah, something kind of important. I mean, it's a great kind of point you brought up. Just for the sake of the study and just kind of how it played out, we obviously have, this Ukraine conflict, and that kind of served as, obviously huge compounding factor into the study, right? But something that you kind of brought up and you kind of mentioned was, assigning beneficiaries, like, hey, having to actively think, do I have some kind of a sort of life insurance set up? Like, what about my family? If something happens, are they going to be taken care of? That definitely that adds to this whole idea of mortality awareness. And so even something as simple as that potentially impacts financial risk taking, spending behavior, etc.
And in the new holes we're poking in, as we bridge the gaps and questions, and try and put understanding around how two people that go through the same thing can end up in such different places. It taps into bigger questions. When I enlisted in the Marines, I could have gotten $30,000 to do the exact same job in the Army, $40,000 to do the exact same job in the Navy, $50,000 to do the same in the Air Force. But something fundamental in my 17-year-old macho brain chose the zero bonus guy that like made fun of me for not being able to do enough pull-ups. I was challenged by the idea of not being able to be part of this group and selected it instead of money and a more prosperous future. That's really important to recognize as we develop financial content for this group of folks. And Nate's I don't remember how you found it, but this dice game I think was a really cool way to measure how do we understand it? Do we understand the math of like, oh, it's better to take the 30 than to roll for the 10? But I'd be willing to bet if you had 100 Marines play this dice game and then 100 college students play this dice game, you'd find the Marines or the rollers, rack them up, let's play. And that's kind of our culture where, our their friends and family kind of expect like, oh, there's a deployment coming up. I hope you don't have to go. Well, if you could drop into the room when that decision comes out, like, oh, it's a deployment, like it's competitive. I want to go. Put me in, coach. And that's a little bit, again, it's important in the mindset and just understanding the mortality of like, how are you supposed to plan to have $1 tomorrow if you don't expect to live through the day?
Yeah.
And then we present people with a finance plan for when they turn 65. There's no connection to that person. However, we can develop small habits to put them on that path using that competition and friendly peer-to-peer support we already find in the military. And the last point was, of the 26 or 30 people that made it over the finish line, only 2 of them knew somebody else in the study. So it was mostly individuals seeking this intervention for themselves. So we didn't really have that peer-to-peer competitive aspect. When this is a program that gets dropped into a shop, Dawson, like, I don't know what Intel looked like, but I worked in a flight line shop. There's 100 Marines. If we made this a game from week to week, month to month, I know that the participation would be higher. And based on the initial insights, the participation is going to drive positive impacts on both risk-taking behavior and spending behavior.
And another thing, sorry, can you hear me? I started to lag out.
Yeah. You're
good. So another part of it is that idea of the closeness and similarity and the almost game aspect of what Freelance Corporal does is when you take away the idea of things like, oh, well, I don't have the money to eat at Chick-fil-A today, and I just overdrafted my account 2 days ago for a car payment. Instead of that punishment architecture of, well, now you're in even worse financial burdens based on the decisions you already made, and we're going to punish you on top of that. When we did something like not even just the dice roll game, there was also, oh, well, here's game night. All you have to do is build a financial plan. Somebody did it in 45 seconds, got like $20, and that was his thing that day. He was like, yeah, I just won $25. May or may not significantly influence his financial situation, but the idea that you can change the perspective. Okay, well, I'm trying to plan financially day to day and budget and do better so that I can afford the things that I want to spend my money on. When you change that mindset, you start to see more and more of the participation that people are after. And even with the Wheel of Fortune, had my smooth brain moment where I looked and counted letters and determined what the words might be. I wasn't so much concerned about the money, but more the aspect of playing a game. And even that in itself can change the discussion on finance in any group, whether it's military, college kids, people in entry-level positions that have never touched a 401k. If you start to turn things into something tangible, oh, I'm playing against all these other competitors, or we're a team and we're trying to break open that piggy bank like in Squid Game. It's like, hey, everybody wants that big prize in the sky. But sometimes when you add those punishment factors, it starts to detract from the end goal, which is improving financial situations across a group, XYZ, whoever they are.
Yeah, the ability to provide a reward for doing a good thing versus a punishment for doing a bad thing is, I have a 3-year-old daughter. Like, I get my ass kicked by it in parenthood often. Like, you've got to be ahead of the game to come up with and to drive an environment that's conducive to teaching the student what you want them to learn in a way that matches what they're interested in. And just meeting people where they're at, whether it be, hiding the shows and foods I don't want my young daughter to eat. Like, I set the environment up, and like, it gives me the best shot of avoiding a meltdown. Very similarly, and adults are not that much different. If you can set up an environment that kind of guides them using like a carrot on a stick, guide them towards what they wanted to go towards anyway, without the growing list of distractions every single day. No, it's again, it's a unique opportunity in a group of service-oriented, challenge-seeking. Like, I don't know. I could go on and on about how much I love service members, but I mean, it's like, I think this is going to have huge applications across anybody seeking financial literacy. But to start, this is important we make an impact here, for a handful of reasons. But we've got to make military service more associated with transitioning into a positive place and less associated with a cardboard sign under a bridge, which unfortunately I think is what the high schoolers are asking the recruiters now when they come into the high school. Like, why would I do that? I see what happens. So to the recruiters listening, to the colonels and generals listening, this is the chatter downstream, and it's very much impacting the ability to implement any solution at any level. So with that, let's spend a few minutes talking about next steps, and I'd love your feedback on where you think this is heading and how we get there, and take it away. Or is that my talk?
Oh, yeah,
I was going to pass it to Nate.
That's up to you. You're the head fan. Let's see. You wanna pause recording, Dawson?
No,
I can record this too. It's up to you.
No, let's stick with it. Let's do it live. There's a lot of moving pieces, right?
What's going? I guess like what's next? On my end, like, I kind of told you, I'm down to kind of stay on the Freelance Corporal team and whatever that might have looking like. Kind of a small, I did mention this earlier, but I had a final stage interview for UserZoom, tech company, this past Wednesday. So we'll see. I think your audio. Oh, you're muted.
I got a dog bark. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we'll. I felt really good about it, but I'm like, what's the word? You cautiously optimistic. But here's the thing: is even if I'm still working 40 hours a week, I'm still down to allocate 5, 8, 10 hours towards.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm really rooting for you. I cannot wait to lose your talent to Google. I will not be able to afford you soon. I know that. So yeah, please, and anything I can do to help. Stoked for you, and thank you for what you've done so far and your commitment to the future. I mean, it's there's a lot of really difficult days where I'll get like a cool meeting with somebody, like a potential stakeholder, or like the imposter syndrome you feel when somebody big is interested, and it's panic mode. Like, oh my God, why is anybody listening to me? What have I done? What have I started? But I mean it. Like, this is you both. It was a minute-long video, maybe it was a TikTok or something, but it was like one guy at a concert. He's just dancing his ass off alone with his shirt off, kind of like,
I've seen that one, yeah.
Awkward and uncomfortable. And then somebody else comes and starts dancing with him. And then a group comes up, and then all of a sudden it's a dance party. And it's not really that first nut, just the lunatic drunk dancing by himself. Like, to me, as I view it, like, I attribute the growth and the dance party that it becomes to those first couple people that come and say, hey, don't make fun of him, he's cool. And I mean, it's you can spend a lot of time avoiding things you're bad at, not get yelled at, but it takes a special type of like I don't know the word, but it only takes one person saying you're good at this to make you start seeking something that you feel like you might be good at. And it's so very important that we connect as many people as possible to that little glimmer of hope, that little positive pull towards the future, that I just serve so many functions. Like the positive ripple, no theoretical end. Right. So it's good on a number of fronts, but on the financial piece especially, like, what would make somebody plan for tomorrow if today sucks? Like, and it's I started studying suicide, and I see it in such, like, across the board. I see it at bars and in packs of cigarettes, and I'm always questioning mortality and like, do we even want to be here? And that's a question for a master's of psychology level program. But it's also a question that gets pondered on a deployment or on the way to a deployment. And how do we bridge this gap of conversation between the people that know the science behind why we do things the way we do and the people that experience it at a capacity that most people never will, and we hope they never have to. So again, I'm so excited. This is a really beautiful thing happening here. If I can spend one moment on what I foresee coming next and where I hope we're at with this now, and continuing to make this a free service for service members. I'm very hopeful to be in touch with IDMe or GovX as a verification to make sure everybody on our platform is military affiliated. That would be incredible to have a connection with a company like them. And then what I see happening next through networks such as Bunker Labs, Spousely, the Marine Corps National Business Network. There's a huge array of networks of veteran entrepreneurs. Most of them have a product or service they're trying to advertise and sell. Well, I have a group of service members that are challenging themselves to reach their own finance goals. And I think there's a huge opportunity to crowdsource those products and services from those veteran entrepreneurs to in turn give away to the freelance corporals. Now we're crowdsourcing the prizes, and those contributions are free advertising for the businesses, but it's also incentivizing a behavior that we all hope the PFC on the yellow footprints right now is striving for. And that's to make something out of your enlistment. Don't sit back and like hope to get lucky, make a plan and pursue it. And then there's a network on the backside as you go through this difficult culture. It's a hard 4-year job, but at the end of it, there's going to be great options for you because you're very capable and you've worked very hard. And that's the picture we're trying to paint here. That's my take. Dawson, what do you think?
Yeah. So I think a lot of where we're headed might depend on where we started. And I say that to say this, in the idea that things kind of began from a psychology standpoint and then developed to a very social, almost study and control group type of aspect. If you continue to implement those social tools, and whether that's through things like the Reddit page that's been created, or things like when you imported all of the posts from Instagram into the app and people can look at memes natively while they're also trying to plan their budget. I think there are huge, not necessarily like, I don't think the limitations are within the social aspect. I think that's where the opportunities are. And just networking the app and the premise and the concept to as wide of an audience as possible, and then casting that net, building it into the more niche community, which is Marines, service members, whoever the audience ends up being for Freelance Corporal. I think the ideas and the incentive-based architecture that Freelance Corporal's introduced, there's a large opportunity for it to become more in those social circles where you're introducing things like, oh, well, here's the veteran preferred financial planning tool, or here's the idea that veterans can communicate their day-to-day financial situation. How can they improve it by becoming part of this group? And whether it's that, or it's, hey, everyone who took part in this, you now have a chance to win money. There's all sorts of opportunities to be developed. And I think that the right path might not be as complicated as we think it is. I think we're kind of on it right now, and I think the opportunities for growth are not as limited as we might feel they are.
Let's do one live. Dawson, let's see. Tedsland from the app that played the pilot study. I still got a bucket full of raffle tickets here. And I love this idea of, at any point your name could be called to go on a working party or to go on a patrol or to go on a flight or something where something terrible could happen to you and your entire life could change in a moment. Why could we not provide that same thing to say, hey man, you made a plan and you tried really hard. So Tedsland, I believe, I can't read my own handwriting very well, but I'm going to reach out on the app right now. We'll send you $20. Thanks for playing. And everybody else that played, keep your chin up. Something good could happen. Who knows? I think there's a beauty in that it keeps me going. Again, I just really appreciate the support of both of you. And I'm so very excited for where this could head. I just think it's a new way of looking at things that we very much need.
So we are kind of short on time. So let's go on and short to the next month. What do you want to get done in the next? There's two things. I guess I'll say the first thing to Dawson first. So I shot you the slide deck, and I also shot you the whole paper. And so that's a little bit more academic-y. The first few pages are a little bit more leaning towards behavioral economics, which is what this study essentially was, so that's the first thing. So I do have like a minute left. Brandon, the next month, what do you want to do? At least on my end, how can I help you out? What are we thinking?
Yeah, thank you. So when I graduated in 2020, my treatise was 60 pages and it was read by like 2 people. Yours is 30 pages, so we're already on a better track. But what we really need to do is boil it down to an infographic to get that information into the hands of the people that need it. You've already got such strong graphics, but I think what we could do there is just make sure that all the effort that we went through and your study gets read and comes to fruition for what it is. I think that's going to come from this, right? This is a great conversation. It's much more digestible than sitting down and trying to read a fucking academic paper. Pardon my French.
Sure. Yeah.
So with that,
can you shoot me a few points that you want? I mean, it's tough to make results into infographics besides, just putting the charts out there, but we can definitely talk about what that might look like.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll just shoot me like, I guess kind of like a paragraph about like which variables you kind of want a little bit more visualized and in what form you'd like it. All right.
And then Dawson, thank you for doing this. And as we come up with that stuff, let's recycle it and let's just be digital extroverts and get this in the hands of the people that could really do something bigger with it. Yeah, I don't want to. I know you have a meeting.
All right, I'll see y'all. I made Dawson like the permanent host, so he should be
awesome. I'll stick around.
Yeah. Okay. See ya.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and following up with all of that, the idea that within whatever time frame, I think improvements are bound to happen because we've all got the initiative to get there. I didn't get the chance to say it while he was in the room, but my next 30 days is going to be implementing more of those granularities. So I don't think it's going to necessarily pop off immediately, but reaching and infecting other communities with the positive nature of incentives and improving your financial habits within a group. I think that could be really powerful in the Reddit sphere of things. It's kind of why I jumped on building a Reddit community out for Freelance Corporal, because I think it's got a really good potential for community-based social interactions. And that's one of the things that I got out of when it came to talking to research consultants that were already working with you and having them reach out and ask my perspective as a member of the pilot study. It was like, hey, what aspects of the app do you think are working so far, and or could have the most potential going forward. And the things that I talked about improving, they're not necessarily big picture concepts. It's small level. How do we improve the interaction with the end user? And I think some of the things I highlighted, you've got a badge system where people who have done XYZ can attain a badge that's represented on their profile. And I think it's really important to understand, hey, someone that's been consistently improving, consistently participating, consistently doing their budget, XYZ, they jump in and now they've got like 150 awards to their name. And that is shown in every post that they make. And then also kind of mimicked, but not the same concept. Reactions, likes, upvotes. These are all things that are already existing in a social media sphere, whether it's Reddit, Facebook, Meta, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. I spoke to the idea that positive interaction from an audience based on a member of the group that they're already in. So, hi, I'm Dawson. This is an idea I have, and I push it up, and people like it. And now it's being propagated more throughout the network of people who are already a part of the program. So,
Right.
when you're in a network and people value your opinions, and then they get spread more, no matter what they are, it could be something as simple as, oh, here's a budget tool, and here's a Excel document based on finance, and then it propagates and it's on the front page. That's interesting to me.
I love all of this, but what I try, and what I try and consider is all the factors we just ran through there apply to technically savvy individuals who, have an element of competition and a desire for the prestige of a badge. If you don't care about badges, you do not enjoy socializing on a phone or a computer, then we've made something that isn't helpful for that person. Now, in business school, like if you're trying to sell to everybody, you're selling to nobody, and we know that. But the military pulls people from all walks of life. It's a melting pot is an outdated term, but it's everybody jammed into one room. So there's a lot of feedback is necessary to make sure that it's working for everybody, because there's so much different perspective that traditionally in the melting pot setting has been boiled away, said you don't do it that way anymore, now you do it this way, here's what you think now, goodbye. Does the military need that to survive? Probably. I'm not a general, I don't know. But what I do know is there's a better way to say, hey, how was your experience and how could it be better for the next person? And oftentimes in military culture, if you don't think your opinion matters, you don't believe that your feedback is actually going to make it to the person that needs to read it, and because it probably often doesn't. There's not a lot of faith in command climate surveys. That's a problem. But it's not something we can't address. We just needed to go about it in a new approach. And I think that's hopefully what we're, as Lance Corporals, introducing the idea of, in a world where lieutenant colonels are rocking the boat on various news programs and social media channels with the same frustrations we're experiencing with, by the way, the bigger half of the military, the enlisted population. So, I mean, the questions aren't going away. Military is a hierarchy. When we have flat questions, this is inherently counterintuitive. It's a square wheel, but we can make it roll. We just got to look at it differently. That's my 10 cents. So what? I'm so very excited that Nate likes us and wants to stick around and keep helping. The part now is just making sure that we're able to put everybody to their best, make sure everybody's doing what they think they can do best. Thank you so much for starting the Reddit page. I don't spend time on Reddit. I don't know the language there. Thank you. It's going to be awesome. I don't know if I can share my screen. I wanted to show you something real fast. I can share my screen. So this is our growth from the time I graduated. Come on, can you see it? There it goes. Okay, I graduated in May of 2020, and for the first 6 months, I was in the Los Angeles Bunker Lab cohort, just conducting research and trying to figure out how to best do this before we brought it online. November 10th, I launched the website. And then let's see, I want to say in June is when I met Nate and we started kind of designing the study. So yeah, it's exciting to watch this thing double and double and double. So I do not even have Reddit listed as one of our social media channels on here.
We're at like just above that 0 mark right now, but eventually,
same,
right?
But same with TikTok and Twitter. No presence there. I don't know. I'm only one person. I can only do so much. But there's a shitload of young Marines on TikTok. So like, as exciting as this graphic is, like we've reached 2,000 people. So I mean, like, it's going to get out of control at some point, and all of this discussion we're having is ensuring that we have the good foundation and structure in place, so that when one day 100,000 people join, all of a sudden, it's a recognizably good and trustworthy place, which doesn't come easy, So hopefully, the name of the game, the goal is transparency, so that we can make informed decisions, which is often not the case in the world of finance. So I mean, how cool, right? Like, you got out. Do you have your DD 214 yet? You got it. Did you get the? Out? Are you still?
It was like the middle of April, and we're in the start of June. So,
you're off terminal.
Yeah, I only had like 6 days of terminal from April 11th to the 17th. So I got a lot of love on my way out.
It's so exciting. Like, how much have you learned in these last 2-3 months, like in your studies for the test you're taking? It's incredible.
I don't even really want to limit it to studying to be a financial advisor. There's so much other stuff. I've got a Bunker Labs notebook full of contacts and people that I want to talk to still. I'll give him a shout out just because it kind of plays into these last few episodes, but this book, Change Masters by Barry Moltz, he basically talks about kind of that psychology of needing to make a change and how other factors play into, are you going to make the change or are you not? And how to get to the answer of yes on making changes in your life. Outside of that, I did the Small Business Administration's their summit, and they talked about all things small business, no matter who you are. If you're a business owner who's looking towards that B, trying to turn your $1 million company into a B, or if you're from like Wichita, Kansas, and you're just trying to babysit kids and make money doing it, it doesn't, I don't think there's any point in anyone's life where they should feel like there's no opportunity. And I think what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, whether it's things with Freelance Corporal or things with understanding where people come from as the very uneducated and ill-informed, like the TikTok finance generation, where you're learning how to evade taxes online and you think that that's the right decision.
It's the SparkNote problem, which I realized in community college. Okay, the first semester I'd read the book all the way through, and then as we went on, I'd get busier, life would happen, I didn't have time to read the whole book, so I'd start skimming through the SparkNotes, and I'd show up to class feeling like I understood what happened in the chapter, but I didn't. I had the bullet points, but I had no understanding of what actually happened. And like all that context that happens in the lines of the pages, it's unrealistic to think that you can just skim the bullet points and get that. Now, is it realistic to read every book in its entirety? No. Do you want to have an understanding of the concepts in every book that you can? Yeah. So it's this balance between which ones do I deep dive in and which ones do I generalize on. And I think there's some element of, we always joke about not being able to take your inside jokes outside, and like why does social awkwardness exist? Why is there social barriers? And like, why does that discomfort happen? Well, it doesn't happen with the people you're comfortable and close with. But how do you become comfortable and close with somebody? Well, you have to break those barriers down. Like, so when you meet a Marine, there's so much bullshit you can cut through, and like, oh, you're a Marine too? Best friends. Well, not best friends, but there's so much you can cut past and just get to the point. America, all right, it's perhaps the most culturally diverse place on earth. The military that protects it is a small sample of it, but like if we can improve our lines of communication in one, hopefully we can help in the other. And I think that's it's very important as it feels. I do got to get running pretty quick here, but I want to follow up with you. I want to connect you with somebody on the SBA thing you went to. I've got some questions I can't answer for them, and let me know how I can help with the Reddit situation. And then I'm excited for this. We haven't done a live giveaway, but Tedsland, when you post this, let me know, and we'll get them a prize.
Yeah, it'll be on Monday. So honestly, I don't know if you want to wait for me to upload everything. I don't have much to cut with the video. I usually just leave the whole thing intact.
Let's think about this psychologically. I think I need to do a teaser and say somebody from the Pilot Study 1, be sure to listen to Dawson's podcast Monday to see who it is.
Yeah.
That's, I'm not an expert at anything, Dawson. We're stumbling uphill. It's awesome though.
We'll make it.
Monday morning, I look forward to it. And thank you again. Yeah.
And it was good to hear from Nate too.
Yeah.
I love having new voices. So anyone that's attached in any way to either one of us, I'd love to talk to on not only psychological implementations of like financial tools, but the perspective of finance from a very uninformed level, where we're asking questions and maybe not getting all the answers, but we're getting towards the answer overall on how to improve.
I think I'll put you back in touch with Melissa, who's a researcher that did that user experience interview after the pilot study to kind of ask what you liked, what you didn't like. It'd be kind of a cool meta-analysis to go back and let you ask her questions about why and how she asked the questions she asked you. And then we can kind of drill even deeper into how are we thinking about it? How do we think about how we're thinking about it? Just like kind of continuing to drill into that window of things that we know that we don't know. If that makes sense. But yeah, no, we'll pencil that in. And no, I think there's going to be I'm glad you like podcasting. I think there's gonna be a laundry list of people that are excited to chat with you. There's so many people trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So if we can develop a tool that helps them to do that better, then we've created value. That's all I'd like to do.
All right, man. I'm gonna let you get running. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully soon we can let Tedsland know he's got some money his way.
Yeah. Congratulations. Thanks, Dawson. Have a good weekend.
See you, buddy.